Well, good morning everybody and welcome to this very wet Sydney day. And I'd like to welcome everybody that's joined this Telstra virtual event today. It's great to have Stan Relihan with us as our guest speaker on social selling. Before we get started, I might just go through a bit of housekeeping. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Telstra virtual events, for those on a Mac or a PC, you'll see a number of widgets at the bottom of your toolbar or the portal. So for example, Q&A is open throughout the whole event. So if you have questions for Stan, send them in. If you're very socially engaged around Twitter, you can actually click on the Twitter widget and sort of log in to your own profile and send questions to Stan. And there's also the opportunity to fill out a survey at the end because Telstra Virtual Events is an ongoing platform that we always look for improvement, so we really welcome your input. Unfortunately for those on tablets, we don't have access to the Twitter account, but hopefully that's something will change in the future. So let's kick off and get started with Stan. Stan, welcome so much to Telstra Virtual Event on social selling.
Hi, thanks Carl. Good morning everyone. Hi, I'm Stan Relihan. I'm a recruiter with Professional Recruitment Australia, or PRA as we usually refer to ourselves. I've been a recruiter since 1997, and that's pretty much the time when internet started going mainstream in Australia. And as a result, my career has kind of paralleled the impact and spread of the internet as it's disrupted business. And the internet has actually disrupted the recruitment business as well, which is the reason why I guess I'm here today.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've had lots of conversations in the past regarding disruption and social channels. And it's quite interesting that one of the reasons that we asked you in today is that it's actually part of our It's Who You Know series. So for a number of people that have recently engaged with social channels or are looking to engage with social channels, there's still a little bit of confusion around what value these channels actually bring to them as salespeople and how it can actually benefit them in their roles. So that's sort of an interesting thing. I mean, social selling isn't new. So everyone says it's sort of a new concept, but to you it's not new, is it?
Not really. The thing is, when I first started in recruiting, I mean, it sounds really a lifetime ago to mention this, but there were a lot of things that were fundamentally different. First of all, CVs and applications used to come to us via fax. Now, that sounds odd. And at that time, the only way of actually attracting new candidates outside of knowing them already was to advertise, and it cost anywhere between $10,000 and $35,000 to place an advertisement in the Sydney Morning Herald. Now, by today's standards, that sounds unbelievable, and you'd have to do a bit of a fact check on it, but it is true. And the thing about it, of course, is the paper only lasts for one day, so if you wanted to run a campaign, you'd have to do that for a week, a month, or whatever it was. So I originally started out in executive search, and it was a bit of an easy sell, really, to say to people, look, you don't have to advertise. We will actually proactively go out there and contact people with the skills that you're looking for and recruit them in. And then things started to change. Thanks to the internet, first of all, Seek popped up. Now, that was the first thing that happened, and that immediately had a very profound impact on our business because it slashed our fees and the ability to attract exclusive deals from clients a lot, because when previously it would either cost you, as I say, between $10,000 and $35,000 to place an advertisement, it would cost you maybe $40,000 or $50,000 to do an executive search. And then someone says, well, look, I could stick up an ad on Seek and it's only going to cost me a few $100s. It started to become much harder to attract those sorts of big fee numbers. And then LinkedIn came along. And as soon as I saw LinkedIn, I really didn't like the look of it at all, because I'd seen what Seek had done to our business in terms of disrupting things. But the thing is, when something is being disrupted, you've got to recognize it's one of the laws of nature. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. You're either evolving or you're going extinct. And I didn't want to go extinct. So when I saw LinkedIn as yet another threat, I thought, look, there's only one thing to do, and that's to embrace it. Because let's face it, when my clients and HR people have access to the same tools and same databases I do, I've got to be able to offer them something new and different. In the early days, I'd have a number of clients saying to me, why should I use you? I've got LinkedIn, I can do that. And then I would say to them, look, how many connections do you have? And whatever number they had, because of the fact that I'd been so diligent in expanding my network, I was always able to demonstrate a massive difference between their network and mine. They quickly realized, oh, right, okay, well, I'll deal with you.
I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, to me, recruiting and social platforms or channels is a marriage made in heaven, especially from a personal point of view. When I'm looking for a new role or a new challenge, there's that personal drive to do that. How do you think that translates to maybe a salesperson that's in a very competitive environment where maybe there's not that personal motivation? So, because they probably look at you and go, well, of course LinkedIn will work for you, Stan, you're a recruiter, but I'm not.
First of all, the recruitment business is as competitive, if not more, than many other businesses. The other thing about it is that because I'd started in executive search, which was an outbound calling people rather than using an advertising approach, the onus of being able to actually call people up means that when you're in that position, you're actually a salesperson, and it's probably one of the most difficult sales roles there is, because you're actually selling both sides. You're selling the client to get the assignment, and then you're calling people up who've never spoken to you before, and until the moment you call, they didn't know that they wanted to change jobs. And it was my job to convince them, and the fact that I've been able to do it for hundreds of roles indicates that something's working, but it is without doubt a sales role.
There are different companies doing social selling at the moment in sort of different levels and different paths as well. I mean, there's always these different methodologies or rules. I mean, do you sort of have a number of simple rules that you follow when you apply social selling to your sales approach?
Social selling means a lot of different things to different people, but there are a few key things that are common to everyone. And really, I've just boiled them down to 3 key rules of social selling. And the first one is that it's about building relationships and not just pipelines, because those relationships endure. A pipeline will run shallow after a while and you have to top it up again. But if you've built a relationship, then people will actually call you because you've actually got an underlying friendship or relationship that goes beyond their immediate transactional need. The second is that, I like to say it pays to sharpen the axe before you need to chop the tree. And that means that you've got to prepare before the requirement comes along. I say this to candidates all the time. I mean, all of a sudden they're out of work, and then they start connecting up on LinkedIn and building their network. Way too late. Way too late. And the other one is that it's important to pay it forward. And that's really basically be helpful, do favors to people, build capital in the bank, if you like, of relationships, so that one day when you need a favor and you reach out to someone, they will return that. And the funny thing is, as you start to pay it forward, you don't have to necessarily have done a particular favor for the person that you contact, but you start to build a reputation for being friendly, being helpful, someone that is worth talking to. And that is really the essence of it.
It's funny when you talk about point 2, it pays to sharpen the axe. Are you actually saying that if you're building your profile, you should really get your profile complete with the right photo and the right content? Or do you think it's a work in progress? Because I've seen a number of people try and connect with me and sell their wares, and I look at their profiles and their pictures and I think, well, are you actually serious about this?
Well, obviously it's always a work in progress. My profile has changed over the years as the demands of the industry and the sectors that I service and specialize in has changed. But really it is your first insight into you and your personality that people will have. And remember that the interesting thing about LinkedIn is it's one of the few areas in this digital world where you have control of what people see about you. If you're not going to do a proper job of representing yourself, you can't expect anyone else to. So it's very, very important to establish who you are, to put some framework around your personality, around your style. And so a complete LinkedIn profile really, really helps. Whether it be information in the summary about your personality style, whether it be about your career history. Now, you don't have to be looking for a job to show your career history, because what it does is it establishes your expertise.
Yes.
That is absolutely critical in terms of building trust and confidence.
Okay, that's interesting, especially when you talk about profile. We've actually got a polling question coming up. So for those of you that are either on tablets or PC, this is a chance for you to interact. So just a quick question. How many of you actually got a photo on your LinkedIn profile? Yes, professionally taken. Yes, but it doesn't show you in the best light, so it's probably showing you drinking or at a party. Or no, still getting around to it. Let us know what you think. And Stan, later on, will talk about the importance of profile pictures and how it works within your LinkedIn profile. Just sort of while we're waiting for the results to come in, I've got to ask you, Stan, we were actually introduced by a mutual friend who actually thought that, we should connect. And when he actually sent me the details, he mentioned that you had 30,000 connections. I actually thought Tom was being a little bit overzealous with the keyboard and put too many zeros in, but later on when we connected, it actually turns out you do have 30,000 connections. I've just got to ask, why so many? Is that all you do, is just make connections?
No, well, the interesting thing is you can't actually build that many connections by spending time inviting other people. The only way that you can build that sort of network is to establish some kind of attraction mechanism, whatever it might be that attracts people to you. I think, in fact, somebody sent me an email wanting to connect with me because he said, I recognize you must be the black hole of attraction on LinkedIn. Everyone I seem to want to connect, you're the one who's the common thread, so I want to connect with you directly. Having that many connections is useful, but it was more essential in the early days of LinkedIn than it is now. Because back when I first started on LinkedIn, it was around 2005, as you know, you can probably see around 2.5 or 3 million profiles here in Australia. Australia is quite a small market now. So long as you have a minimum of 500 connections, you've probably got enough of a critical mass not to need too much more than that. But back then, you couldn't see anybody's profile at all unless you had at least a third-level relationship with them. So I worked on the principle that people around the world must know an Australian somewhere, whether it be first or second degree. So what I did was, initially I did start to invite a lot of people, and then one day I ran into the first of the LinkedIn gotchas, the things that they don't tell you about. So they're always inviting you to upload your Outlook contact list, and so I did that. And then I got a little note saying, congratulations, you've just invited 1,200 people. You have 200 invitations left. And I went, what? 200 invitations? Because what LinkedIn doesn't tell you is you only have 3,000 lifetime invitations. So I quickly realized I'm going to have to adopt a different strategy. I can't invite people and build a network of any scale by doing that. So I joined a lot of invite me lists. And at that point, I was quite happy to have inbound invitations, and I'd accept invitations from just about anybody. Now that I've reached the other LinkedIn gotcha, which is that there is a limit to 30,000 connections, you can't have more than 30,000 connections. Now, there is a caveat to that because a few people have taken umbrage to that and taken LinkedIn to court and all the rest of it. The problem is I've actually sort of did that once just to test, and I accepted right up to the limit of 30,000. And then I ran into a potential client at one of the events, and he'd sent me a LinkedIn invitation, and I couldn't accept that invitation. So now I like to keep my connection list to around 29,905 or something like that. So I've got a bit of a buffer there so when I meet people I can actually connect them. But now I focus only on making connections in Australia because those are the ones that benefit me in my territory specifically.
That's great. I've actually got a question a little bit further on about that as well. And I think we have some questions that are coming in as well from the Q&A. And we've got the polling results in. Okay, almost 25% of the audience or the attendees today have sort of got a photo that could be better or no photo at all. So
that's not too bad, though. Only a few have got no photo at all, and I think that's pretty good marks. But the interesting thing is I brought along a slide here, which I think you'd be interested in having a look at. It's what we call a LinkedIn heat map. Now, you'll see that the greatest concentration of color temperature, the red and the yellow, is up there on the top left-hand corner where your photograph is normally attached. And that is because that's where people's eyes instinctively go to when they look at a LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have a photo at all there, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Secondly, if you have a photo that's not particularly great, you're also not helping yourself. Now, in my particular photo, I've chosen not to have a professionally taken studio photo, but at the same time, it is there for a reason. It's well exposed, it's in focus, it's nice and close up so you can see my face. It's not a wide shot where I'm standing in the distance or on the top of a mountain or something. And it's deliberately there with the Sydney Harbour Bridge because of the fact that I also do global placements and I wanted people to see, oh, right, there's a landmark I recognise. Because let's face it, Sydney's hot and trendy internationally. Might as well make use of every single little benefit and asset I can.
So that sort of transpires to your profile as well. So we sort of take that one step further. I mean, did you really give a lot of consideration to the way that you mapped out your profile?
I did.
I know you're talking about the heat map, but did that really make you think about, are we all goldfish? Do we have such short attention spans that, do we have a belief that people come to our profiles and spend hours and hours and they don't? So how do you make it really attractive for someone to get across who you are really quickly?
Well, the first thing that I recognised was that because as a recruiter I've got benefit of access to statistics that most people aren't aware of, is that it's pretty frightening that it actually takes you between 6 and 10 seconds for a recruiter or a hiring manager to actually decide to put you in the no, not interested, or yes, so let's have a closer look at that pile. And that's really frightening. So, as they say, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So that was the first thing. And then in terms of creating my profile and the style that I've chosen to write it in, is that what I did in the early days when I was building my profile is I went and I had a look, because back in those days LinkedIn would let you search by the number of connections. So what I did is I went and had a look at the most connected people in the world, and most of them obviously were in the United States, and many of them were friends or associates of the founders of LinkedIn. And then I had a look particularly at competitors of mine. And I started to see, oh, that was impressive. What was it that impressed me about that person? And one of the first things I realized is that some of them actually were quite bold about their accomplishments and achievements. And I'd always been a lot more modest about that. And I thought, okay, well, fair enough. I'm impressed by what they've said about themselves. I don't see it reading about them that it's over the top or that they're being too egotistical. So what they've done is somehow they've managed to communicate their accomplishments at the same time they've come across as human. So I used that same principle on mine. So I talk about my accomplishments because this is what it's about. You don't get an opportunity to make a name for yourself if you hide your light under a bushel. But I also like to inject my personality within that. And so I've tried to show myself as being highly accomplished but also friendly and approachable.
Okay, let's put that to the test. I've actually looked at your profile in quite a lot of detail because when we were introduced, I sort of took the time to understand who you were, to get some context before we spoke. But let's ask the attendees, how many of you that are online at the moment actually checked out Stan and actually found out, okay, is this somebody that's worth attending an event to listen to? So actually, yeah, so did you check out Stan's profile? So let us know. And be honest, please. If you didn't, please say you didn't. I just got a quick question while we're waiting for the results to come in. You were telling me a story before about how you actually made a call to a Big Four CEO. I think, people make the expectation they put the call in and the person knows nothing about them, but you were telling me the story that was not the case.
Well, look, this is a really good example, I guess, of why it pays to have a full and proper LinkedIn profile. Because in this business, and this is something that will resonate with any salesperson, a lot of what I do revolves around cold calls, whether it's cold calling a potential candidate or cold calling a potential client. So I cold called the managing partner of one of the Big Four consulting firms here in Sydney, just left a message, hi, this is Stan Relihan, please give me a call. And, as senior guys do, within 24 hours he returned my phone call, and I was kind of caught on the hop, and he responded. Fortunately, I recognised his name and I knew what it was about, and so he said, oh, okay, so tell me about yourself. And second rule is I'd learned when talking about yourself, try to give an elevator pitch, shorten it down as much as possible. Hopefully they'll ask you some more about it if they need more information. So all I did was basically say, look, I'm a recruiter, I've done a fair bit of work in the professional services area, I think I could add value to your business. And then I sort of casually, like George Costanza eating the apple on Seinfeld, went, and look, if you need any more information about me, just do a quick Google or LinkedIn search on me. And he said, I've already done that, that's why I'm calling back. Bing. And all of a sudden we had the makings of a great introduction and the start of a great relationship.
I mean, you would apply the same to salespeople at Telstra, wouldn't you? So if they're either reaching out to new clients or maybe connecting with new connections within existing clients, should they make the assumption that those people don't know who they are?
Well, obviously right at the beginning, but it's not surprising if you leave a voicemail message and you've got hopefully a fairly unique name. John Smith's a bit hard to fact check, but they will actually look at you on LinkedIn before deciding whether to return your call or not. And let's face it, no matter what business you're in, no matter what product or service you're buying, you want to deal with experts. You want to deal with someone who knows his or her business. So if they're going to return your call, it is really helpful for them to see the credentials that you have to be able to advise them on whatever their solution might be.
Especially if they're time poor. And the other thing is we have some recent surveys that have actually come back to say that buyers actually want to reduce the buying cycle. They want to reduce the time. They're actually saying make it easier for us to buy from.
Don't give me the pitch, cut to the chase. Tell me the benefit, tell me the cost, tell me what's in it for me.
So it looks like we've got our results in. It looks like there are a lot of very busy people out there at the moment, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They just didn't have time to check out your profile. But
hey, maybe my name is so famous they already knew and didn't need to check me out.
But any surprise, would you? I mean, to me that's not sort of unexpected. I mean, there is a lot of data out there to say that, people do reach out and the people they're reaching out to don't research them.
Well, look, to a degree, I guess they may have figured I might be pre-qualified to be here as a guest on this event today. However, though, when you've got a meeting with a client or you're wanting to find a new client prospect, I'd suggest those numbers should at least be reversed, that people should be spending time just checking out who is this person. If they're a decision maker, the more I know about them, the better it'll be, especially if that information is freely available. If you're not using it, you're just not going in with all the ammunition you need.
Yeah. So that comes to, that's interesting. You touched on the very beginning about using different channels and also having different messages, and I think you also used the word repetition as well. So how important is repetition? Where do you draw the line when you're saying the same message over and again, or is that what you mean by repetition? Is repetition different?
Repetition's only a factor on it. The real key thing is exposure, and there is a well-known psychological effect called the mere exposure effect. Basically, it's a phenomenon where people are much more likely to prefer or trust something that they've seen or be exposed to before. And if you want to find out more about it, just do a quick search. There's all sorts of research on it in psychology sites and Wikipedia and the whole bit. But the other thing is that exposing somebody to something is great, because none of us like to buy a product or a service or something that we've never seen or heard of before. But you don't want to bash people over the head of it. Now, I've just got something here which I brought in, which is an example of a clever advertising campaign where they've used the same consistent message on television, on the side of buses, on bus shelters, probably also magazines and newspaper and all the rest of it. Works far more effectively. But if you're watching TV and every time the commercial break comes on, it's that same commercial again, or you change channels to get away from it and it's on the other channel as well, you're not going to sort of trust that organisation. You're going to feel like throwing a shoe at it. You're annoyed, right? So that is repetition to the point of annoyance. But if you see it a couple of times through the night, it sinks in subliminally. You're on the bus and you see another bus cruise past, and all of a sudden you see it on the side of the bus. You get off there on the bus stop. That has an impact, so that all of a sudden, when you are in a decision-making mode or looking for that product or service, which is the one you're going to be remembering, I guarantee you, because of the fact that I'm popping up regularly on updates and other contacts that I have with people, that within my network, the recruiter they mention and remember the most would be me. And in fact, even the event here, where I did a LinkedIn update and a tweet, I had a number of people commenting on it, liking the post. That in itself was another example of the mere exposure effect in action. So simply by doing this and popping up yet again, people have been reminded about me one more time. But in this particular instance, a great and credible way.
So that's interesting, is that even if they still can't attend or they're busy, it's still a recognition for them. So they still think, okay, Stan is active in the market, or Stan is trying to convey information that I might find useful, but at this occasion it's just not benefit either time.
Exactly. But people are busy, they're scooting past things, and often, I'll do the same thing. I'll see it, I'll notice it, and I'll move on. I don't have the time to like it or comment on it, but I have seen it. And I had a number of people call me up from time to time saying, hi, look, I know it's been a long time since we've spoken, but I see you pop up every now and again on LinkedIn, and so I'm calling you now because I've got a need. That's what it's about.
So if we actually go to the next slide, so you're talking about repetition, so that must mean you're using more than one social channel. So LinkedIn we know about, of course, so do you use them all? How do you,
Interestingly enough, I'm not on Facebook. Because I actually, in my private life, I'm quite a private person. So the two social channels that I use are LinkedIn and Twitter, and I use them slightly differently. You can link the two so that any post that I put on LinkedIn will automatically update as well on Twitter. But LinkedIn is a bit like a mullet. Business up the front, party around the back, right? So LinkedIn is my business profile. This is all business. This is what I do. This is my business image to the world. My Twitter feed, though, is my personality, my sense of humor, the things that I like, my interests. And I frequently like to put things on there that I found humorous. Sometimes they're connected to technology in the business I'm in, sometimes they're not. The ones you see there are examples of a clever advertising campaign. I used to be in the advertising industry, so I still monitor that. But a clever advertising campaign by Quiznos, which was a mashup of two very, very popular and timely television series in the United States, which was Game of Thrones and House of Cards. And they called it House of Thrones, and it was hilarious to watch. And that in itself, as you do when you're surfing, I was then led to something else which I'd never seen before, which was amusing, inaccurate lip readings of the Twilight series of trailers. So what they'll do is they take a trailer of Twilight and they'll perfectly lip sync it with other voices. Whatever they're saying lines up with the voices, but they're saying completely different stuff, and it's hilarious to watch. And I just put that up there. But what it does is conveys to people, look, I've got a sense of humour, but I'm also, for a 55-year-old guy, hip enough to be there noticing things on Game of Thrones, House of Cards, and Twilight. So it still has a subtext behind it. And same thing here again. We've got an example of 2 quick images immediately shows a very, very initially frustrating but no doubt effective advertising campaign. Because I'm sure if someone knocked on the door and then ran away and you looked through the peephole and you saw this thing there, you'd go around and see it's only a card. But if you had a special offer attached to that card, a large proportion of people would probably go, hey, that's not a bad idea.
So multiple channels. So is it fair to say that you predominantly would do maybe 40% of your business through LinkedIn, 40% of your personal through Twitter, and then maybe 20% a combination? Or do you think it just varies? Like, I haven't actually seen many people use both channels to convey the same message. I've seen a lot of people take your approach, which is they use LinkedIn more for business use and Twitter more for private use. Do you think that's the best way?
It is, although sometimes they line up together. I think I've just brought another one in here as well, which is a cartoon from Dilbert. The thing about this is that it's both humorous, but it's also very computer-oriented. And because security is an area that I work in, is a 3-frame cartoon basically talking about why phishing scams work. And it's a humorous way of conveying a warning message to people, but it's a bit of a subtext and a reminder of the fact that, oh, yeah, Stan works in the security sector. I must give him a call.
So that's sort of just an interesting thought about one of the questions that's just come in. It just reminds me, everybody, please keep the questions coming in. We do have time at the end to ask Stan quite a number of questions, and we've got quite a few. But we're actually going to shoot to another polling question, and it'll come up shortly. But really, what we really wanted to find out is, do you believe that social selling can influence the customer to buy from you sooner? I mean, it's something that Stan touched on earlier. We'd be interested to find out. I know for some of you that might not be in frontline sales roles or having sales experience, it might be hard to answer, but there are a lot of people on the virtual event today that have come from a sales background. So if you are using social channels, we'd really be interested to hear what your view is.
While people are answering that, I might just interject here. This is like the parallel between marketing and sales. Marketing creates the environment in which sales can take place. And in this particular instance, you're marketing yourself, your brand, your own personality, and the trust that people will have in you. It makes it more effective and easier for you to actually then conduct that sale.
So just while we're waiting for the results, you touched on the positive effects of LinkedIn. I'm sure if LinkedIn are on the call, they're not going to like this next question, but what have you not found helpful, especially about the platform itself? If you look at the context for what it is, it's actually, to hopefully meet new clients, make connections, find out if there's commonality, and hopefully the opportunity to either meet, which I know we haven't touched on yet, and actually create a relationship. But where does the platform not help you in that manner?
Well, just on the positive side, first of all, the key to LinkedIn as a social platform. Best thing is to use LinkedIn to build a relationship and to establish a face-to-face flow, not to avoid them. So many people like to have the image of being connected, but they're actually really, really poor in face-to-face networking situations. LinkedIn's a little bit like Apple to deal with. Love using their products, big fan of stuff, but they can be sometimes monumentally arrogant when it comes to customer service. There was a time when I couldn't, for over 2 years when they changed the user interface, that I wasn't actually able to update telephone numbers on the individual profiles. And it took them that long to finally work it out. So yeah, there can be a few annoyances about it. Ultimately, at the end of it, I don't believe that LinkedIn's back end is quite as robust as Google or Amazon, for instance. I think it's a little bit held together with rubber bands and paper clips. Nonetheless, I can't overstate the usefulness of it, though. I find it that valuable that I've never really become a very vocal critic of LinkedIn. But one of the things that I would encourage everyone to do is that it doesn't actually cost a lot of money to buy the entry-level paid version of LinkedIn, because once you become a paid subscriber, you can start to benefit from another layer of benefits that most people don't take advantage of. You can start to write notes on people's profiles. And these are people you don't have to be connected with. So you can write notes about how you met them, when you met them, what your interaction was like. You can start recording their contact details, and that becomes, if you do it consistently, a very rich and rewarding experience.
Here are the results. I can't believe that no one actually said it doesn't make a difference. I actually thought there would be a few more skeptics out there, but that's wonderful. So, I mean, it looks like we have a lot of advocates. I would be really interested from hearing from anybody that shows that they've seen the results firsthand. So if you had the chance, even just to send through a summary of an example to Kate through the Q&A functionality, we'd just love to hear a little bit of insight into how it's actually worked for you. But that's very promising, isn't it?
I can give you some examples, though, how it's worked for me. And I'll tell you one of the things that really sort of made me realise and start taking LinkedIn seriously was this was fairly early on. This was 2006, 2007. So back at that stage, the number of people visible in Australia was quite small. But I had a client call me up and he said, look, the person I'm looking for is a senior person to either one of these two companies, and he named their key competitors. So I went on LinkedIn and I found one person that matched that criteria. So I thought, okay, I'll call him. I had to actually call him through the switchboard, and I thought, oh, this is the only one that matches the criteria. I can't blow this call. So I made the call, and sure enough, yes, he took the deal. And the minute that contract was signed, I pulled out my credit card and signed up for the premium version of LinkedIn, and I've been a believer ever since.
Just going back, I meant to ask you before, but I didn't have the chance. It talks about connections. I mean, quite often when different organisations are looking at doing social campaigns with their organisations, it's all about how many connections you've got. But I remember when we first met, you actually told me a story about when, one of the most influential people that you had ever met came from someone that you connected with that only had 150 or 200 connections.
Well, the key with any network, whether it be LinkedIn or even a personal and social network, is it all boils down to the same thing. It's like going to an event and talking to the same 6 people that you work with. Why are you going to that event? There's 300 people out there, you're not talking to any of them. Sure, you don't know them, but you're wasting your time. If you don't believe in getting to know people you've never met before and reaching out to those that you haven't made contact with, or friends of friends, you're missing out on opportunities. No point in joining LinkedIn. You might as well just use the contacts in your iPhone. It's the people you don't know that bring the opportunities. The people that you know that can refer you to someone else, friends of friends. That is really where the opportunities lie. There's often this question about quantity versus quality. You need to have both. Obviously, you need to have quality contacts to start with, but having more contacts is also useful. And every now and again, I will break my rule of only connecting with people in Australia, because I get a persuasive or impassioned email from someone who says that I'm planning to come to Australia in a few months' time or whatever, and I'm starting to build a network in advance. Would you mind? I see you're the conduit to a lot of other people. Sure. And I've attracted a number of pieces of business from that mechanism of people that I've either met a long time ago or who have been referred to me by other people. But the key thing is, and this is the one I think that Carl was talking about, is I was actually interviewed a while back in 2007 on the podcast network for then having the amazing figure of 5,000 LinkedIn connections. The guy was a typical journalist, fairly friendly, got me hooked in saying, this is great, we should come on my show. So I went on the show, and then all of a sudden he turned adversarial and started grilling me about the benefits of LinkedIn. And he asked me, he said, so tell me, who's the most impressive profile you've seen on LinkedIn? And there are a lot of impressive people on LinkedIn now, but one of my personal heroes, if you like, and I don't have too many heroes, was none other than Vint Cerf. In his profile reads, I'm co-inventor of the internet. And if you follow that up and you check out Vint, V-I-N-T-C-E-R-F, you'll see that he's on LinkedIn, and he's renowned back in the 70s for having created the TCP/IP platform. So I said, oh yeah, look, for me the most impressive person on LinkedIn is Vint Cerf. Now I'd fallen into the trap. And so the interviewer said, okay, let's put your LinkedIn network to the test. Let's see if you can actually get this guy as a guest on my show. So I thought, oh, okay, sure. Naively went, yeah, this is no problem. I'd never done this before. Reached out through the introduction mechanism of LinkedIn. So I went out to my LinkedIn network, and I did not knowing much about it. I picked somebody that had 22,000 connections. This was way back when I only had 5,000. I thought, this is the guy. He's got so many connections. He's highly connected. He's the guy. So I sent an email to this guy asking him. Now, I don't know whether it got passed on or not, but 10 days went by. No result. And I thought, oh, well, that'll teach me to open my mouth in public. But fortunately, what I'd done is I'd actually let all my LinkedIn contacts know about the interview that I was in. And one of the ladies that I was connected to directly sent me an email saying, I'm just listening to your interview now. And by the way, Vince Cerf is an ex-colleague and personal friend of mine. Would you like my help? Boy, would I. So 2 days later, I got an email from him. Sure enough, he was a guest on the show. He and I connected, and we've spoken on a number of occasions as well. And that was quite a thrilling experience. But the essence now is that if you're trying to reach out to someone and you see that there are 5 people connected to them, see how many connections that person, your intermediary connection, has. If someone's only got a few connections, that shows that they're not indiscriminate networkers. So if they've only got 150 connections and they're connected to the person that you know, they are much more likely to have a very strong relationship with that person than someone who's got an indeterminate number of 500 plus. And that's the key, is someone who is not a major networker will almost certainly have the contact details of the person that you want to make contact with.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because that actually sort of segues into how much time that you spend looking for those connections as well. So we've actually got our last polling question that's just come up, which is, for many of you in sales, do you see social selling, or actually social engagement as well, because it doesn't always have to be from a sales perspective, being part of your FY15 sales approach? But we've actually got a question here from Gavin, who's actually online. He actually asked, Stan, how much time per week do you spend on LinkedIn?
Oh, depends, right? Some days I will spend just about all day on LinkedIn, because earlier in the week I've been out going to lunch, talking to clients, getting briefs, and all of a sudden I've got a load of work to do and I've got to find people. And that becomes my day of sitting there and reaching out, searching, finding potential matches, mailing them, contacting them, calling them. So some days I'll spend all day, some days not at all.
We've also got Brian online as well, who said, Stan, do you actually give any value to the premium paid accounts? I know you sort of touched on this.
Yeah, I do.
You should, but some organisations will actually pay for their sales executives to have it.
I think it's worthwhile doing. And even if they don't, it's tax deductible, because it is a genuine, legitimate business expense. And I would definitely recommend it. I would definitely place value on it, primarily because of the fact that you can keep notes on that person's profile. And you go back a year later on and you can see all your interactions with that person, what you had to say.
We've also got another question from Tarek before we look at the results. So they've already come up, but we'll just come back to that shortly. I mean, it appears that there's, over 80% are going to incorporate social engagement into their strategy next year, which is quite an incredible result.
Great, yeah, great. No one said no.
No one said no. So we've definitely got a lot of people that are socially engaged at the moment. Tarek, I'm sorry I haven't pronounced it right, sort of asking, is there a risk that for salespeople having LinkedIn contacts that you haven't dealt with professionally or know in person, it just seems like another Facebook?
Well, there are ways of contacting people you don't know. And just sending an invitation is the worst way of doing that. One way of doing that is to ask somebody that you know in common to introduce you. And that can actually be done most effectively if you do it out of LinkedIn. If you say to that person, could you introduce me? They can do it through the LinkedIn introduction, which is kind of a form letterish way of doing it. The smart way of doing it is if they say great, and they'll actually do it from their own personal or business email. And even better ways, if you say, better still, I'll invite you to coffee and I'll introduce you face to face. Because never forget, the whole point of these social platforms is to stimulate and build opportunities for relationships rather than to avoid them. The other way of doing it, if you really don't know someone or it's not practical to use any of those other methods, is to send them a note before you send them an invitation. Hi, seen your profile, would be really interested in getting to know you, maybe a reason why, I see we've got a number of contacts in common, would you be interested in connecting? Or would you be receptive to meeting? You don't always have to connect to them straight away. And for someone who's a big connector like me, I'm actually now quite subdued in terms of connecting up to people before I've had an opportunity to build a relationship with them. And I'm happy to say that Carl sent me an invitation to connect after we met him before I had a chance to do that. Because I was waiting.
Basically, on connections, we've had another question. It's actually quite relevant because it was not dissimilar to the next point I was going to ask, which was content. A lot of the industry and solutions leads at Telstra, for example, are content sharers quite regularly, and the whole idea is to build not only their personal profiles, but also expertise about where they fit within Telstra. I mean, how important is sharing content to you? How often do you do it? Do you have some rules about that? Do you think it makes a big difference? Do you think it's more about your connections and the content you share?
Look, people are so snowed under with lots and lots of content. It's very, very easy to feel swamped and overwhelmed by it, which is one of the reasons why I like to send cartoons and pictures, because as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words, or in today's parlance, an image is worth a megabyte. It's something that attracts attention and stays in their memory, so it communicates quickly. Every now and again I'll see something good, and I know that I've actually had a very, very positive response from a client of mine that I sent the Kleiner Perkins Caulfield Byers report on status of the internet. And it was a very, very thorough and detailed report, and I'd sent it to him. And he phoned me later on to commend me on the value that he'd been able to gain from that, and was actually able to extract information from that for internal and client presentations in their own firm. Remember, it's a little bit like talking. People listen more closely to people that aren't babbling all the time. If you talk a lot, people will not recognize the gems that are in all the rest of it. So with content, be selective, be impactful, be thoughtful.
That's great. I think we've just been very noticeable of the time. I think we've got time for one more question. It's just come in. I mean, this is a really, really good question. As a busy sales professional, why should I spend an hour or two filling out my profile or interacting on social media versus doing what I've already done? So if I'm a sales executive and I've used to making phone calls, meeting people at networking events or sending emails, and that's how I've done it for years, and I've been fairly successful, why should I take 2 hours out or whatever time out per day to suddenly engage with this when I'm already getting success elsewhere?
Look, the best way I can answer that, I guess, is to compare it to a retailer. We're a very successful department store. We've got customers coming in all the time. What do I need a website for? Simple answer is, you're dealing with people who are busy. Just like a retailer's website works when they're closed, your LinkedIn profile will work for you after hours when people are not receptive to taking a phone call. Most likely your clients and customers are busy people. They will probably spend their evenings, weekends doing their research. And that is when you're having a thorough and well filled out and persuasive profile is going to really benefit you.
That's great. Stan, it's been wonderful having you. Our 50 minutes with Stan is almost up. We managed to get through some of the Q&A questions, not all of them. So for those that have sent questions in, we will get back to you. Unfortunately, we just don't have all the time in the world. I certainly gained a lot of insights from today, especially I think around the way that I could probably connect with people. So I found that really useful. So I wanted to thank you for that. I also want to just thank Kate from the virtual events team and Jamie from On24, our partner. And just as a final goodbye before we go, before everyone just shoots off, we'll be really grateful for your feedback. The virtual events platform is forever changing and evolving, and we really want to make it the best experience we can for everybody that attends. So your comments do really make a difference. So please just take a couple of minutes out to just fill it in. And we actually, for the survey, and we really look forward to seeing you at future Telstra virtual events. Thanks very much again, Stan, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.